Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the 42nd President of the United States, William Jefferson Clinton.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much again for the Club of Madrid honoring our state, our city, and my library and presidential center by coming here. I want to thank Jerry Jones for coordinating this event, Stephanie Street, and all of our staff and volunteers for working. And I want to say a special word of thanks to the panelists and the moderators who put so much effort and a lot of good wisdom into the discussions. We are about to close and present an award, but before we do, I would like to summarize a couple of points I made for Time magazine about, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks ago. They asked me to write an essay about why I was optimistic about the future. And I gave 5 reasons. I only want to talk about 2 of them today. First, I said that in the face of all this continuing insecurity and instability and inequality and the harrowing evidence all around us that climate change is already underway, I am optimistic because of the growing empowerment of women in the economic and political world, in the increasing insistence that the world's children, including on equal terms girls, deserve our support, our protection, and our help in making the most of our own lives, and in the clear development of an understanding all around the world that we cannot build a future of shared opportunities, shared prosperity, shared responsibilities, unless we do these things. When all the girls are in school and all the young women have access to the labor markets, population growth slows and economic growth increases. Furthermore, women are more likely than men, I'm sort of ashamed to admit this, women are more likely than men to reinvest economic gains back into their families and their communities. In one of the countries in Africa in which my foundation has had the honor to work, Malawi, we tried to deal with the challenge that was discussed at our dinner last night. The whole question of whether Africa can feed itself and the world can be fed without abandoning smallholder farms. And we had an unusual opportunity in Malawi we decided to use as a test case. We were able to secure a fairly large farm that we turned into not just a commercial farm, but an anchor for all the smallholder farms. We used it to bring economies of scale to the smaller farmers all around, to get bulk pricing for soy seeds, for fertilizer, and also to make sure that the farmers, as I said last night, no longer had to worry about their food rotting in the fields or paying half their income to get their food to market. Many of these were women. And the yields increased on average 3 to 4 times. We also were involved in rural Malawi in building a hospital in an area that before had had no health care. And I went to visit the construction site. I will never forget this. And we were building the hospital out of homemade bricks from the area, in an old-fashioned way where we did the balancing with strings. And I was wandering around, and the construction manager said, "You understand what we're doing here?" I said, "Oh, yeah." He said, "Why?" I said, "Well, I've done this for a living. I built things for a living." He said, "You did?" I said, "Yeah. I lived on a farm when I was a boy, and there I determined I did not want to work that hard. Then after I built houses, I decided I didn't want to work that hard, so I went into politics." But I noticed this man spoke English with, American English with no accent, better than I did. And I said, where did you speak English that way? He said, oh, I watched you running through a park in Seattle in 1992. He said, I was with the local newspaper, then I went to work for Microsoft. I said, and now you're here building a hospital? He said, yes. I said, why? He said, my country needs me more than Microsoft. I'll never forget that. And he said, you want to know what I'm proudest of? And we looked at the whole, because before we built the hospital proper, they built housing for the doctors and nurses. And there were about 500 people on the site. Half of them were women. Half of the construction staff were women. He said, none of these people have ever gotten a regular paycheck in their lives, ever. And he said, now we have trained a national construction force. Many of them are not married, not tied down. They can travel around the country. We now have trained workers, and half of them are women. And he smiled. He said, they also now know they're supposed to get paid every 2 weeks. We should be excited about that, excited about the fact that very large numbers of private sector companies are involved in training and trying to empower and fund women to advance their capacity and their career opportunities. We should be proud of the increasing political influence of women. And I just had a very moving encounter before we came here. I don't think she would mind me saying this, with the UN Special Representative on Sexual Violence and Conflict, Zainab Bagura, who was formerly the Foreign Minister of Sierra Leone. And she said, okay, you said last night we had to figure out what to do about sexual violence in places of conflict, especially in the Congo. So I'll tell you what you can do. And she proceeded to give me an assignment, which I will proceed to try to fulfill. And it made a lot of sense, what she said. In Bahrain, which is sadly now known primarily because of the ongoing conflict between the Sunni minority and the Shia majority, which interestingly enough has an economic basis, because in tiny Bahrain there is still a city and a rural area, and most of the Shia live in the rural area, which is poorer than the urban areas. But before that, they were known because a decade ago they opened national elections to women and increased the participation in the administrative government of women. And interestingly enough, as far as I can determine, became the first country in the world to run its economic policy with the goal of moving up on the World Bank's index of competitive countries. And to do it with a decision-making process that was 50% government, 50% private sector, meeting openly, meeting regularly, with women fully represented. They moved from 39th to 13th in 4 years. And with all the trouble they're having, I think it's worth remembering that the efforts they have made to overcome gender discrimination still deserve our support. As I think was mentioned yesterday, there are now more women than men in universities in Saudi Arabia, and King Abdullah built the first coeducational university in the country's history. They moved over a decade on the same list from 59th to 11th. In no small measure because they are trying to get more women involved. I went to Riyadh, which is very important. Riyadh's a much more conservative city than Jeddah. So I went to Riyadh 2 years ago to an event that I might have attended here in Little Rock as a governor. It was honoring the entrepreneurs that had shown the most success early on in building their enterprises. And it was a very sweet ceremony. They had little risers, almost like you see a choral group standing on, and they got all the winners up there. One was a woman. This is Saudi Arabia and Riyadh. And when her award was announced, she turned around and started high-fiving all the men. Something that even 10 years ago you would never have seen in Saudi Arabia. Certainly you would never have seen in Riyadh. Sometimes you have to measure these indices of progress in small steps, but this was a deeply encouraging thing to me. Not just because she felt free to do this, but because those men respected her accomplishment and were happy for her and comfortable sharing this process with her. That's a good thing. The second reason I'm optimistic is that I think the developments in technology in the world will help us to equalize educational opportunities for girls and increase the economic empowerment of women. When I was working in Haiti, both before and after the earthquake, one of the things that bothered me so much was that the country was full of talented people. Example, less than 2% of America's African-American population is Haitian. 11% of our African-American doctors are Haitian. They are extraordinarily gifted people in every endeavor who for 200 years have been misgoverned. As our Dominican friend is nodding her head out there, yes? So they have been abused and neglected by their neighbors, and sometimes they have engaged in self-abuse the way children sometimes do if they are abused when you're raising them. But they have enormous potential. So one of the things that I have known from the time I became involved there is that they have no banking system for ordinary people. They have these big banks, they're dominated by big families. 20% of their income every year is earned by men and women from Haiti who work in other countries and send their savings home to support their families. So if you run a bank, you can make all the money you need just by taking the American dollars, the Canadian dollars, the French francs, the Bahamian currency, and charging a fee to convert it into Haitian gourds. So you take your fees and sleep the rest of the year. As a result, small business loans carried an interest rate of 45 to 60%, and there was no banking. So I got the two people to give me $20 million, and we set up a small business loan program. And we make loans at 5 to 7.5%, 100% payment so far. First loan to a woman-owned enterprise making craft work that she sells around the world. And then, more importantly, the largest cell phone provider, Digicel, made a partnership with a Canadian bank, Scotiabank, to do banking with the cell phone. Only 15% of the Haitians had any connection to a bank, but 85% of them had a cell phone. So overnight, and a lot of these were women, overnight, women selling produce in the streets went from having no access to banking services to being part of a banking system. And this is just the beginning of what can be done. We found the same thing, by the way, after the tsunami in South Asia. A lot of the women whose husbands were fishermen who had been killed wished to do what their husbands had done. And it was an easy thing to replace the fishing boats. But we learned if we gave them all a cell phone, they would instantaneously be able to earn 30% more than their husbands had earned, simply by being able to call 30 miles, 40 miles away and find out what the price of the fish was there. Because their husbands had frequently been cheated out of income they deserved by people knowing that where the tsunami hit was a very poor area, and they had no way of knowing what the market price of the fish was that day. These kinds of things are happening all over the world. And that's why I am especially glad that you're giving Layla this award. When I finished, she came to the Clinton Global Initiative in 2010, and this year Hillary gave her the Secretary of State's Innovation Award for the empowerment of women and girls, and you'll hear more about her project, but I want to thank her because she committed to start a program to help non-college educated, middle-aged, unemployed Americans use the internet to become connected to the modern economy instead of trapped in yesterday's economy. This, for all of you, you might be interested in this. Of all the good news about women's empowerment, America is home to one of the worst pieces of information. Since 1990, life expectancy of middle-aged people who did not finish high school in America, who were non-Hispanic whites, that is, people who were once automatically in the middle class if they worked and are now left out, life expectancy has dropped 3.5 years for men, 4 years for women. And if you look at it, the reason almost no American noticed this is that it came out, the news did, in a public health article instead of a political article. And, you know, since Hillary had a traveling job for several years, I was home alone a lot, and I had time to scour through all these otherwise not very prominent stories. So I'm reading this story, and they say, well, the life expectancy of this group has dropped because smoking is up among this group. And women's life expectancy dropped more than men because they were even more likely to take up smoking. And obesity, diabetes, and diabetes consequences were up in this group. And deaths from drug problems from prescription drugs, not conventional narcotics, was up in this group. But they might as well have said these people are dying of a broken heart, because they had assumed if they were willing to work and eligible to work that they would be able to build a middle-class lifestyle, have strong families and strong communities, and they would have something to look forward to when they got up in the morning. And of all the things that I'm most grateful for in Lila Jana's commitment, she's giving these people a chance to have something to look forward to when they get up in the morning. It's the most important thing, even more important than material success. The thing that kills people's spirit in life is when they think every tomorrow is going to be just like yesterday. You think about President Shmaratunga. She's lucky to be alive. She's undergone incredible losses in her life. She keeps finding something to look forward to. That's the most important thing for everybody. And that's the thing I leave you with. The only other thing I would like to say is this. Last night at the dinner, after the dinner was over, I don't want to embarrass them, but I was having a fascinating conversation with the man whom I succeeded as Attorney General of this state, who then succeeded me as governor, Jim Guy Tucker, and his wife, who are avid supporters of the Heifer Project and travel the world a lot, both on business and NGO work. And they were telling me that they had once spent a day in China, walking a whole day to a heifer project where all the beneficiaries were women who were working with silkworms. They had gotten silkworms from heifer. And what he said about this group, he said, you know, this Club of Madrid is really impressive, but the best thing, he said, is, it's somebody, he was a attorney general, a congressman, and a governor. He said, it must have taken me 10 years till I was out of office, till I felt as comfortable or more comfortable working with NGOs as I did trying to convince people in politics that they should do something or another. And he said, I think that this is a great thing that he said, what can the Club of Madrid do with people who are still in office anyway? I said, quite a lot if they want help in governance. And we've done a lot of good work. But he said, just tell all those people, if you get a chance to talk to them individually, he didn't know I was going to say this, that this is a really good way to start the second decade of the Club of Madrid's life, defining what we can do, having been in politics, to empower people in civil society to make these kinds of changes. So I think we've had a great conference. I'm again grateful you came to Arkansas, and thanks for giving me a chance, and I'll turn the platform over to Wim Kok. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, let me first of all thank you, President Clinton, again for your inspiring words. As you told me yesterday evening at dinner, that having grown up in a period of time where television was not yet there, that you developed very much as a storyteller. And that's exactly that. It would be unfair, of course, to say that you're only a storyteller, but you're perfect in telling stories and making them human, coming by doing that close to the heart of people everywhere. And that's why people, one of the reasons why people are inspired by what you're doing. Secondly, I want to thank you for hosting this event and for being with us yesterday and also now here. And I just want to react to one other remark, President Clinton, you made. That was on the Club de Madrid's activities and our, well, where do we have our contacts? Of course we have our contacts with global, regional, national, local leaders, political leaders, but we are not limited to that. We reach out to civil society organizations. We tell to political leaders and to opposition parties that it's extremely important to create a kind of civil society within their countries, where not only political democracy is of course a factor, because democracies without a fair political system doesn't work, but you also need civil societies. And so we tried, when we were, for example, a few months ago in some of the MENA countries, and we have been there already for years, already before the Arab Spring started, on freedom of association, on the women's rights, on women empowerment and women leadership in politics and also in the economy and society. When we were there, we were welcomed very much, not only by those who were in power, but also by those who were in opposition or by civil society groups. And we met many women leaders over there during our mission and in our contacts. So I join you in what you are saying, that Club of the Madrid members, former heads of state and governments, can do and do really in practice a lot of work in order to reach out to a broad parts of society. Well, having said that, let me say first of all, in the 11 years of our existence, the Club de Madrid has, of course, encountered and worked with countless people that deserve recognition for their leadership in furthering the democratic development in the world. Back in 2008, 4 years ago, the members of the Club of Madrid instituted the Club de Madrid Democratic Leadership Award to formally recognize those who embody the organization's democratic goals, values and principles in the most exemplary way. The Club de Madrid Democratic Leadership Award honors individuals and or organizations whose outstanding leadership has fostered the consolidation of democratic values, practices, institutions and governance in an excellent way. And the award was established to recognize and promote ethical and courageous leadership that translates visions of a democratic society into practical action for the benefit of millions of people around the world. In 2008, we presented our first Club de Madrid Democratic Leadership Award to Nelson Mandela during a private ceremony that was held at the Mandela Foundation. And our thoughts are with him, especially these days. He's still in hospital. His situation seems to be improving somewhat, according to the news spread by the President of South Africa. And we are with him and hope, sincerely, hope and pray that he will be in good health and will recover from his illness and return from hospital. And we will send him a message wording exactly that wish. The second edition of the award was presented to President Clinton. That was last year in New York at our 10th anniversary gala dinner that was held over there. And the hard work, the vision and the dedication and the strong will and your unique capacity and capability to get things done and to bring people together and to keep people together was a true example and the reason why this award was handed to President Clinton. He represents a sincere, practical and open-handed commitment to the democratic values the Club de Madrid upholds. This year, here on Little Rock, we are pleased to present our first Club de Madrid Young Democratic Leadership Award, and we believe it's important to also highlight and support the good deeds of our young generation as great sources of inspiration and innovation. And I'm delighted to present this award, and your name has already been mentioned a few times, so nobody is still uncertain about who will get the award. Laila Jana, founder of Samasours, for an innovative social business that connects women and youth living in poverty to dignified work via the internet. Laila, of Indian origin, is a 29 years old, young should I say, USA citizen born in Buffalo, New York, and she grew up in San Pedro, a suburb of Los Angeles, California. She won a college scholarship at 16, but convinced them to let her spend it teaching in Ghana and attended Harvard University, graduating in 2005 with a degree in African Development Studies. While at Harvard, she consulted to and authored papers for the World Bank's Development Research Group and Ashoka on social and economic rights. Upon graduation, Laila worked as a management consultant with Katzenbach Partners, and Jana left the firm in 2007 to become a visiting scholar at Stanford University with the program on global justice, founded by law professor Joshua Cohen. That year, she co-founded Incentives for Global Health with Thomas Pogg, Leitner Professor of Philosophy and International Affairs at Yale, and Aidan Hollis, a Professor of Economics at the University of Calgary, which established a blueprint for incentivizing the development of new drugs for neglected diseases. In 2008, Laila launched Samasours, then called Market for Change, an idea that was inspired by her experience at the World Bank and in fieldwork in Mozambique, Senegal, and Rwanda while she attended Harvard. She is a recipient of the Rainer Arnhold and TED India Fellowships and serves on the San Francisco board of the Social Enterprise Institute. So, Laila, our sincere congratulations, and please come and join us and accept this very well-deserved award.
needless to say, I feel very out of my league up here. I owe the Club de Madrid, Jerry Jones, Wim Kok, and President Clinton my profound thanks, and that of my team and the thousands of women and youth that we serve. This summer, I met a striking 18-year-old young woman named Martha in a slum in Kenya's bustling capital city. And she was about to age out of the orphanage that had housed her since her parents passed away a decade ago in a rural part of Kenya. Martha speaks beautiful English, and she managed to finish high school, but she couldn't afford college or housing because she couldn't find a job. And Martha had done everything society asked of her. She made good marks in school, she took care of other children in the orphanage, and she had tried desperately to find a source of income. But simply because she'd drawn the wrong ticket in life's birth lottery, Martha was about to be on the streets. Her story is shamefully common, even among women who end up finding work in the informal sector. Women produce 66% of the world's output, but earn less than 10% of the income and own less than 1% of the property. The word sama means equal in Sanskrit. I chose it as our name 4 years ago because I'm an optimist. I think most people want to live in a world where opportunity is distributed equally. So how do we do this? For the last 60 years, solving the global poverty problem has stumped politicians, activists, and economists. We started with that old model of giving a woman a fish and feeding her for a day. We sent millions and later billions of dollars to fragile governments and poor communities in the hopes that this immediate aid would reduce their suffering. And then we got smarter. We realized that teaching women to fish, or maybe giving them cows and goats, would not only reduce suffering in the short term, but also create livelihoods in the long term. And so we invested in education and training, in microfinance, and in workforce development. But even as women learned to fish, and even as we saw small gains in their incomes, the problem grew faster than our solutions. And then we realized something. The women we teach to fish are living in deserts. We expend enormous resources to educate and train young people for jobs that don't exist where they live. 95% of Kenyans under 30 can read and write in English, but most, like Martha, can't find jobs once they graduate from high school. UNICEF has found that up to 30% of teenagers in some Kenyan towns are pulled into prostitution because it's their only source of viable income. This pressure is felt around the world. Women need more than a fishing pole. They need to be connected to a river. And I believe that that river is digital work. The amount of data moving online is just staggering. Last year alone, we created more bits of information than there are stars in the universe. And we need armies of people to make sense of all this new information. Samasource has invented a model, a microwork model, to transform this massive stream of data into opportunity for the world's poor. We developed technology that breaks down big, messy data projects into small units of work or microwork, and we train poor people, poor women and youth, to do this work from local computer centers in places like Nairobi, rural Kenya, rural India, and even in Haiti. You can think of it as outsourcing 2.0, as a virtual assembly line, as both teaching a woman to fish and ensuring that she has access to a river in the digital age. 4 years in, we have contracts with over 100 large technology firms, including Microsoft, Google, and Walmart.com. And they work with us not out of charity, but because these women and youth are able to deliver great quality. They know that this job is their only chance. As a nonprofit, our bottom line is the number of people we've moved out of poverty. And I'm proud to say that number is around 15,000, double what we reported last year. We've shown that women from slums and villages in 6 countries in Africa, South Asia, and Latin America can create economic value with their minds, not just their bodies. Martha is one of them. She now earns a living wage in Nairobi doing data entry with Samasource, and she just moved into a room of her own in an apartment. But we have miles to go. As President Clinton mentioned, this problem of poverty is not limited to developing countries. 1 in 6 Americans now lives in a family that earns less than $22,500 a year. Our level of income inequality is higher today than it has been since the age of the robber barons before the Great Depression. So we're launching a pilot in a poor neighborhood in San Francisco to see if this river of digital work can provide opportunity to low-income Americans. We have an audacious goal: to move 250,000 people out of poverty in the next 5 years. You selected me and Samasource for this incredibly high honor because you believe that technology can change the world, not just for those of us who live in wealthy cities, attend conferences, and direct policy, but for the Marthas among us who dream big and come from nothing. You believe that work is at the core of human dignity. And so I ask each of you who have earned your place among the world's most powerful statesmen to join me. When you return home, do so as an ambassador for this cause of giving work. Every government in the world has digital projects, from digitizing census data to making court records public. We already pay at least $10 billion annually to for-profit outsourcing companies for basic data services. If we directed just 1%, and this is the right kind of 1%, if we directed just 1% of this, or around $100 million, to low-income people, we could hit our goal. For less than the time it took you to travel here, we could show you how to do it. So I invite you to join me. Send me an email to 1%, all lowercase, at samasource.org, or send us a tweet or find me afterwards. I think that if we decided to tackle poverty with the same zeal we applied to putting a man on the moon or mapping the human genome, we could do it in my lifetime. Technology is a great leveler. We've connected over 6 billion people to mobile phones and over 2 billion to the internet. And this means that for the first time in human history, we can tap Earth's greatest natural resource, the human brain power of the billions of women who live on less than $3 a day. I want future generations to see technology as a powerful force, not just for social networks, but also for social justice. I want them to inhabit a world where poverty exists only in memory and in museums. I know you share this vision, and I hope you'll take the pledge to join me in building a microwork system that will channel that mighty river of digital opportunity to those who need it most. Thank you so much.
I just want to inform you that we interrupt the meeting for just 2 minutes and invite Stefan Secour and his panel members to the podium, and then the program will be continued. Thank you.
Carol, you make your way forward and we'll have a quorum for our closing panel. Tawakel, you take a chair here and Carol at the end, and then we're... Carol, you've got a long walk, but just keep going, you're nearly there. Fantastic. Well, ladies and gentlemen, do bear with us. I am well aware that if you look at the time, we're sort of running late. In fact, we should have finished by now, but we haven't. In fact, we're about to begin. But what I would say is that it's going to be worth the wait. Just if we can all bear with the program for another half an hour, we're going to hear some fascinating stuff from 3 terrific contributors. I'm going to introduce them all right now, in brief, and then we'll learn more about them over the next half an hour or so. But let me just start at the end of the panel with Carol Kiddu, who is a member of Parliament in Papua New Guinea. She is retired, but nonetheless, I'm going to tell you a story because it's a fascinating one. She's a former minister. She, I believe, and Carol, you're going to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you sat in the Parliament as the only woman amongst more than 100 male MPs. That is quite an experience, and we might tap into that in a moment. She, I think, was also leader of the opposition. So,
we had 2 prime ministers.
Well, you have an extraordinary career in a country which, let's face it, is pretty traditional in many of its attitudes, and you've led a challenge to some of those attitudes, and we want to talk about that. Next to Carol is Kim Campbell, who I know almost all of you will be familiar with now. Kim's already contributed fantastic work to this particular conference, but Kim, of course, I think as a former Secretary General of Club of Madrid, she knows this format and this institution very well. She has an extraordinary claim on history in Canada as the first female leader of Canada. She's also been a senior minister in the country as well. She's played an extraordinary role on the international stage since leaving office in Canada, much of it devoted to gender issues and women's empowerment, and that's why I'm delighted that you're with us right now, Kim. And then finally, we come to another fantastic member of the panel, somebody with an extraordinary story. Tawakel Karman is somebody I have met before, and I'll tell you the story of meeting Tawakel was a fantastic and memorable day for me. I get the privilege of every year going to Oslo in December. There are some problems with going to Oslo in December, not least the fact it's usually about -20 degrees. But I get to meet the most extraordinary people because it's my privilege every year to put onto my show Hard Talk the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. And I'll tell you a funny story. Just before the announcement of the winner in 2011, I'd taken the show to Yemen. And Yemen, as many of you will know, is part of the Arab Spring story, and its politics is changing very fast, but it has had a very difficult couple of years. And when I went there, I went to the south of Yemen, to Aden, and Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, a bunch of militants, jihadi militants, were very strong in the south. They were moving in on Aden. And within about 3 days of me being in Aden, I got a call from my bosses at the BBC, from actually one of the top bosses in the BBC, saying, Stephen, you have got to get out right now. We've got a specific intelligence-based warning that your life is in danger and you must get to the airport right now. So, of course, you don't really quarrel or argue with a message like that. You just do what you're told to do. So I got on the next plane, which was actually not to London, it was to Delhi, which was a little inconvenient. But nonetheless, I remember on the flight thinking to myself, and I'll be honest, Tawakel, I was thinking, God help Yemen. You know, that country is in such a terrible mess. Just a short time later, this amazing news came out that a Yemeni woman had been nominated and had been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. And Tawakel, as she's, I'm sure, going to tell us, has been absolutely instrumental in saving Yemen from chaos. She's been involved in the political process. She's currently involved in the National Dialogue, which is trying to establish a sustainable long-term democratic government in Yemen. She has been leading sit-in protests long before President Saleh left office. She was one of those courageous people sitting on the square in Sana'a, refusing to move, just fighting for democracy, for women's rights. Her story is truly incredible, so I'm going to invite Tawakel to kick us off by giving us an address from the podium. And please, everybody, give Tawakel Karman a very, very warm welcome.
Thank you, dear. And it isn't good for Yemen to speak about Yemen just about Qaeda. You have to speak about hope. You have to speak about sexy people and the transitional period. You have to speak about the peace there, the youth, the women who make a great change. So I invite you now to visit Yemen, and no one will threat you. First, dear ladies and gentlemen, I am so proud to be here in Little Rock, the very important city in the history of the United States, because of its struggle for human rights, especially for African American women. Dear, please put your machine, because I'm going to speak in Arabic.
Does everybody have a translation kit? Because if not, put your hands up and we'll make sure that you get one. Just bear with us, ladies and gentlemen. We've got a team getting the translation kits right now.
Okay.
I think we better just wait one more second, Tawakel,
Okay.
because not everybody has the kit yet. Right, a big bag has just arrived with lots of translation units, so keep your hands up, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll get them all to you.
Sorry for that. Do you want me to speak in English?
No, we want you to speak in however you feel most relaxed.
In
and
Arabic,
comfortable.
I feel comfortable with that.
Yeah. Right, there's some hands up over here. Actually, there's lots of hands still up. I hope we've got plenty of kits left.
Hello. Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. No. There is another hand. Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Peace be upon you. أيها الأعزاء، يمكن القول أن مسيرة الإنسانية تزخر بكم هائل من الاتفاقيات والعهود والإعلانات الدولية، من الإعلان العالمي لحقوق الإنسان إلى العهدين الدوليين الخاصين بالحقوق المدنية والسياسية والاقتصادية للمواطنين، إلى إعلان الألفية، وقبله قمة الأرض وإعلانات قمم ريو الثلاث، والكثير من الاتفاقات والعهود والمواثيق الدولية التي تكفلت بموجبها الدول بكفالة حماية حقوق الإنسان وحرياته، وكفالة التنمية للجميع، والحفاظ على سلامة الأرض وحماية مناخها وتنوعها البيولوجي ونظمها الإيكولوجية، إلى التعهد بكفالة الحرية للرجال والنساء وبذل الجهود الكافية لينالوا حقهم في أن يعيشوا حياتهم بحرية وكرامة، وأن يربوا أولادهم بكرامة وفي مأمن من الجوع والخوف ومن العنف والقمع والظلم، إلى غير ذلك من الاتفاقيات والتعهدات بكفالة المساواة وضمان عدم حرمان أي فرد أو أمة من فرصة الاستفادة من التنمية، وضمان المساواة في الحقوق وتكافؤ الفرص للرجال والنساء، إلى التعهد بمواجهة التحديات العالمية على نحو يكفل توزيع التكاليف والأعباء بصورة عادلة وفقاً لمبدأي الإنصاف والعدالة الاجتماعية، وغير ذلك من القيم العظيمة التي تحدثت عنها الكثير من المواثيق والعهود الدولية، تلك القيم التي نحن بنو الإنسان في أشد الحاجة إليها في هذا القرن. نحن بحاجة كبيرة وكاملة لتنفيذها بشكل عاجل وكامل وشامل. المرأة كذلك نالها حظ وافر من تلك الاتفاقات والعهود، فهي مذكورة في كثير من التشريعات والقوانين الدولية، وهي تحتاج تلك التشريعات والقوانين كإنسان وكامرأة تعاني من اضطهاد وتمييز وعنف وإقصاء هناك وفرة حقيقية وكبيرة من تلك التشريعات والاتفاقات والمعاهدات الخاصة بحقوق المرأة وحقوق الإنسان بشكل عام، بحقوق الشباب والأطفال. هناك حزمة كبيرة من الاتفاقات والعهود المختلفة التي تكفل للمرأة تحديداً حقها في المساواة، حقها في الحماية، حقها في عدم التمييز، حقها في مكافحة العنف. هناك الكثير من تلك التشريعات والاتفاقات التي للأسف وحتى يومنا هذا لم تنال حظها الحقيقي من التطبيق. المشكلة ليست في التشريعات ولا في المواثيق، المشكلة في الفقر في التنفيذ، المشكلة في الفقر في الالتزام في أطر عالمية قادرة على إلزام المجتمع الدولي وقادرة على إلزام جميع الدول وعلى رأسها الدول النامية والأقل نمواً بالالتزام بتلك المواثيق والعهود لأسباب كثيرة. المشكلة أيها السادة والمطلوب هو أنه لا توجد حتى الآن آليات موازية لتلك المواثيق وتلك المعاهدات لوضع الحلول. لا توجد آليات موازية لتنفيذ ما لم يتم تنفيذه من برامج وخطط لتنفيذ تلك المعاهدات والاتفاقات الدولية الخاصة بالتنمية المستدامة. لا توجد خطط وبرامج جديدة شاملة وكافية للتحقيق وقابلة للقياس. لا توجد برامج متضمنة التمويل والإشراف والرقابة والتقييم الأممية والإقليمية والوطنية لتحقيق كل تلك المعاهدات والمواثيق، لتحقيق كل تلك القيم والأهداف والغايات التي ذكرت في الاتفاقات والعهود الدولية. دعوني أيها الأعزاء هنا ومن نادي مدريد أن أوجه الدعوة من أجل مشاركة فاعلة للمرأة في الحياة السياسية بشكل عام وفي الاقتصاد بشكل خاص. من أجل ذلك العمل على إنجاز معاهدة دولية ملزمة تلتزم بموجبها كافة الدول بوضع بكفالة مشاركة عادلة ومنصفة للمرأة في الحياة السياسية عبر إنجاز تلك التشريعات الناقصة، وخاصة في الدول النامية والأقل نمواً إنجاز التشريعات والقوانين الوطنية التي تنص صراحة بأن تشغل المرأة نسبة 30% كحد أدنى في مواقع الحكومات والسفارات والبعثات الدبلوماسية والبرلمانات، فضلاً عن قوانين تلزم الأحزاب بمشاركة مماثلة في الهيئات القيادية لها وفي القوائم الانتخابية التي تتنافس عليها في الانتخابات. أيها الأعزاء، دعونا نعود فنذكر إلى أهمية التطبيق، وحتى في ظل سن تلك القوانين الوطنية يجب علينا أن نحرص تماماً على التنفيذ. دعونا أيها الأعزاء كذلك نعود فنذكر ونذكر أن إعلان الألفية تضمن أسساً ومبادئ عظيمة. كل هذه المبادئ والقيم العظيمة التي وردت في إعلان الألفية يجب أن يتبعها برامج وإجراءات وسياسات وتدابير كافية لتحقيقها تنفذ على صعيد عالمي وفي كافة أقطار وبلدان العالم، تجعل من كافة التعهدات ومن كافة قرارات زعماء العالم حيز التنفيذ. لقد أقر زعماء العالم في إعلان الألفية قبل 12 عاماً، أقروا أن التحدي الأساسي الذي يواجه البشرية اليوم هو ضمان جعل العولمة قوة إيجابية تعمل لصالح جميع شعوب العالم. ذلك لأن العولمة في حين أنها توفر فرصاً عظيمة، فإن تقاسم فوائدها يجري حالياً على نحو يتسم إلى حد بعيد بعدم التكافؤ وتوزع تكاليفها بشكل غير متساوي. أذكر هؤلاء الزعماء، زعماء العالم، وأغلبكم هنا من هؤلاء الزعماء، أذكركم بأن العولمة لا يمكن أن تكون شاملة ومنصفة لجميع شعوب العالم الذين تعهدتم لهم بذلك، إلا إذا بذلت جهود واسعة النطاق ومستمرة لخلق مستقبل مشترك لإنسانيتنا المشتركة، مستقبل مشترك قائم على العدالة والإنصاف، ينتصر لضميرنا الإنساني، تتجسد عبره التزاماتنا الأخلاقية والإنسانية تجاه أنفسنا وشعورنا بأخوتنا في الإنسانية. على ذلك أيها الأعزاء، على جهودكم وعلى سياساتكم وتدابيركم التي يتعين عليكم وعلى جميع زعماء العالم في الوقت الحالي أن يقوموا بها، عليهم أن يقوموا أن يضعوا في أولوياتهم القصوى الاستجابة السريعة والحية لجعل هذه العولمة عادلة ومنصفة لجميع شعوب العالم، تستجيب لاحتياجات البلدان النامية وتلك التي تمر اقتصاداتها بمرحلة انتقالية. نذكرهم جميعاً بواجباتهم باعتبارهم قادة تجاه جميع سكان العالم، ولا سيما أضعفهم، ولا سيما أطفال العالم، فالمستقبل هو مستقبل أولئك الأطفال. نقول لهم أن لا يزال الكثير من تلك الطموحات والأحلام التي صغتموها في إعلان الألفية لا زال حبراً على ورق، ولا زال ملايين من المحرومين، من الفقراء، من المحتاجين في هذا العالم، شعوباً وأفراداً يزدادون حرماناً وفقراً وضعفاً حين تزداد العولمة قسوة، وهي تصر على توزيع بركاتها فقط للأغنياء دون الفقراء، فيزداد الأغنياء فقراً ويزداد الفقراء فقراً بشكل غير عادل ولا منصف، وبطريقة تهدد مستقبلنا المشترك وسلامنا العالمي، والذي سيؤثر حتماً بعد ذلك على الجميع، إذ لا سلام دون تنمية، ولا تنمية دون سلام. أيها الأعزاء، دعوني أذكركم جميعاً بأن من حق أولئك الذين يعانون، ومن حق أولئك الذين هم أقل المستفيدين، من حقهم أن يحصلوا على العون من أكبر المستفيدين من أجل إنسانيتنا المشتركة، من أجل المرأة والطفل الذي نناضل من أجلهما. شكراً جزيلاً.
Thank you very much indeed, Tawakel. And actually, you put your comments in the context of something I think we will sort of close our conference with, a consideration of where we stand in terms of the overarching goals that were set by world leaders in 2000 when they defined these Millennium Development Goals, and there were 8 of them, and I guess most of us can probably roughly remember what they were, but of course it was a commitment to eliminate extreme poverty and hunger. It was a commitment to try to eradicate disease. There was a commitment to development in a sustainable way, developing global partnerships for development between rich and poor, but particularly germane to everything we've been talking about in the last 24 hours was, and I checked it, I mean, it was a quite clear determination to promote gender equality and empowering women. And there were then benchmarks that were set, including, I just noted down one as I checked it, to eliminate gender disparity in all levels of education by 2015. Because the whole point was that there was going to be a reassessment and a review in 15 years to see if the world was serious about keeping the promises it made. And don't forget, every single nation at the United Nations signed up to these Millennium Development Goals, 193 nations, I think it was, in the year 2000. So what we had from President Clinton a little bit earlier, and I really appreciated hearing it, because, you know, there's been so much talk in the last 24 hours about some of the challenges and some of the terribly difficult situations that women face in so many different parts of the world. But what I appreciated was that, you know, God love him, President Clinton is the ultimate optimist. You know, he's the guy who can see a way forward, not simply out of blind optimism, but because he can see fantastically positive trends. And he talked about what they were. What I want to hear, and Kim, perhaps you can kick us off on this, is whether you share that optimism. As you look toward 2015, you measure reality against the Millennium Development Goals. How optimistic are you feeling? No, whichever you prefer, but do you have a microphone? You should. You can either...
It's all right, I'm just demented. Well, you know, that's an interesting question, because I look around this room, and I'm a former Prime Minister of Canada, and when our Foreign Minister spoke today, I remembered him as a young whippersnapper assistant to the man who was my Foreign Minister. And it's almost 20 years ago that I was Prime Minister, and at that time, I was very deeply committed to the advancement of women. And I look around this room, and I see women that I've worked with over the last 20 years, Milan and Swanee and Laura. And, we're the usual suspects who we turn up at all the conferences and the meetings, and we plot and scheme together when we do programs. And Gloria Steinem, the famous American feminist, once said that women get more radical as they get older. And I think that's true. You just get tired. You say, enough already. Enough of trying to make the case. But I have to say that one of the things that I feel from this meeting is a sense of optimism, because I do think that although it's aggravating sometimes to try and have to make the case all the time. It's interesting, I'm a member of a Wall Street Journal task force on women in the economy, and I thought, you know, if the Wall Street Journal is interested in women in the economy and is concerned about the underrepresentation of women in economic leadership, it's got to be mainstream. We're no longer fighting the battle. This is no longer a question of, you know, well, we'll talk about this later when we've dealt with the serious business, just to be nice to the ladies. There is now, I think, a really well-documented and scientifically and empirically well-grounded and supported understanding that we don't do this to be nice. It's not about truth, beauty, and justice, although truth, beauty, and justice are part of it. It's about survival. It's about success. It's about prosperity. And it's not a battle of men against women. It never has been. It's a battle of men and women who get it, to persuade men and women who don't get it about where we need to go for the future of this world. So I am optimistic, because I do think that the terms of the argument have shifted. We're no longer talking about what we need to accomplish. We're talking about how to get there. What are the mechanisms? What are the tools? And I'll just conclude by saying, again, quantum leaps are amazing. And there are some social issues. People talk about the issue of gay marriage, for example, which has kind of progressed by leaps and bounds in terms of its public acceptability. And yesterday, Irene Natividad, who's again another one of the usual suspects who heads an organization of women in about women corporate directors, gave a presentation in the context of a discussion about quotas. And my Club of Madrid colleague, Chalmanda Bondevik, gave an excellent presentation about how Norway had created a quota for 40% women to be on corporate boards. And I think the Norwegians started out sort of mildly persuasive, and then they said no, they passed legislation, and there was a dramatic increase. And Irene put up a chart of the other countries in the world who have followed suit. Italy, the United Arab Emirates has just passed legislation to create this kind of a quota. So you look at, you know, it's a who'da thunk it moment when you see that. Malaysia, a Muslim country, passing a law requiring a quota of a minimum number of women on their boards. Now, the best way to describe quotas is that there'll be no fewer than 40% of either sex. That's a nicer way of expressing it. So, I am optimistic. I think the only advantage of getting to be an old broad, of getting older, is that, you know, and as I say, you see these young whippersnappers who are now your foreign minister, and But the one advantage about getting older is you actually do see the sweep of historical change. And sometimes it's going in the right direction. And it cheers you up and you think, you know what? All of that nattering and nagging and talking and pushing all these years, maybe it's finally paying off. So the short answer to your question is, yep, I'm optimistic.
Well, I like the long answer, so I'm very happy with that. That was terrific. And you know what I like? I love this phrase you just developed about this issue that we've been thrashing around, which is so important to the future of our planet, frankly, being a journey not just for women, but a journey of men and women together who get it. I think that's a great phrase. And I want to just throw it to Carol, because I hope you don't mind me harping on about this, but it is quite striking to me that in your political life, you were once, and for some time, one against the many. One woman against a whole lot of men. I mean, not against, but that was the reality of your situation. I just wonder, we've talked a lot about Africa, we've talked a lot about the Middle East region and other parts of the world. We've talked a lot about Western culture and economy too, but we haven't heard so much from Australasia. So same question for you, Carol. At the end of this conference and this exchange of ideas, how much optimism are you taking away with you?
It's a very different question than I was given in my terms of reference, which I diligently prepared for. But yes, I am. When I listened to our presentation, our award presentation, of course, I am extremely optimistic when we have young women and young men all around the world, like our young award recipient today, because every generation brings new people. But I was actually asked to talk towards priorities as we move post-2015.
You mean thinking about the MDGs?
Yeah, can I do that?
Please do that too, because that's very much part of what I wanted to finish with.
To do that a little bit. And I was asked to speak to what is my one priority or my main priority, and saying that is very, very difficult. But I'd say the single priority that I'd like to single out is that the SDGs, as compared with the MDGs, must be framed in a human rights framework. The MDGs were very clinical and it made countries work towards targets and goals, but they didn't necessarily get framed within a human rights framework. And this needs to be based on inclusive and sustainable development principles if we're going to work forward on this. There's been so much work going towards the post-2015 agenda. And I'm just hoping that the post-2015 agenda will listen to all of that work that's been put in. For example, with our President, Tasha, former President of Finland, from Club de Madrid. She's a co-chair of a high-level panel, a high-level task force that I'm privileged to be on, looking at the International Conference on Population and Development 2014 and beyond. And our sincere hope is that 2015 and beyond, the ICPD agenda will feature in MDG 5, which has focused too much just on maternal mortality, which is indeed extremely important, but that extreme focus on maternal mortality has taken away from many other issues of sexual and reproductive health and rights, some of which are extremely contentious. In the post-2015 agenda, will we be bold enough to take on some of the very contentious issues? I've also been privileged to serve on the Global Commission on HIV and the Law. And when we look at MDG 6, and of course, these MDGs should be looked at in an integrated way. You can't look at them singly, and that's been part of the problem, I believe. And I always used to use sums at home and say 1 + 2 + 3 = 6, to get people to understand that you can't do 6 alone. To work on HIV, you've got to work on goal 1, goal 2, and goal 3, and combine that work, and that will help you to address goal 6. But in the post-2015 agenda, if MDG 6 remains, which it needs to do, I don't think we should throw any of these babies out with the bathwater, but we need to broaden them, well then, will we be bold enough to look at some of the legal impediments to managing the HIV epidemic? These are very difficult, contentious issues which often get dropped off the international agenda because many nations will balk at them. But nations are entitled to put reservations. I think at the international global level, we've got to state it as it is and let nations make their reservations. And can I have a little bit more? I want to just reflect something more.
Go on.
Thank you. On another organization I belong to is a regional one, and actually Kate is here from that organization, the Asia Pacific Forum of Women on Women Law and Development. And they've really worked solidly on preparing 2015 and beyond. And they've worked towards 4 new goals. And I'll just mention them, and I think they're worth hearing. They want a goal on access to resources and an indicator that aims to increase the percentage of people who have access to land and the percentage of women who have access to land. And let's debunk some of the myths in countries like Papua New Guinea that women did not have right to land. It's a myth that is being perpetuated now by men. They want a goal on decent work and economic rights. I think these are goals that have real meaning in them. And they want an indicator that measures where the country has legislated in these ways. And then a goal on peace. That would be really quite good, I think, to have a goal on peace. And to an indicator that compares military budgets to expenditure on health and education. That could be quite a challenging indicator for many developed worlds. And their final goal is on a voice, 40% for everyone, including women, abled or disabled, marginalised or indigenous. So these are some ideas on 2015 and beyond.
I think they're great goals. The only issue is whether there's any point setting goals that you might believe are extraordinarily hard, if not impossible to meet. I mean, do you undermine the credibility of the process if you do that? I mean, Tawakel, you made a point of emphasizing the degree to which you still want to see the commitments made in 2000 met, and some of them haven't been met. I just ask you, I mean, do you believe this process of setting goals at the UN, that appear to unite the whole world, but then we struggle to make real? Do you think it's a process that we need to continue with, or do you think there is a problem with it?
I really believe on plans, usual, but
and
also,
targets.
but also I believe on implementation more. This is number one, and number two. Really, yes, I am optimistic, especially when I talk about people. When I talk about women and men. But when we talk about government, I don't want to say that governments, I don't want to say that I am not optimistic. But I tell them that they have to do their commitments. Right. With people, we need women and men to be together to build their society, to build their country, to build also new world. But also, with sustainable development for all the world, we need the great countries with weak countries to work together. So when you see to the declaration of MDG, the Declaration of Millennium itself, you will see that it was a great declaration. It was a great values, a great principles. And suddenly all that declaration shortage to just 8 points, just 8 goals. And even with that 8 goals until now, after 15 years, we didn't reach to the goals that they put on the 8 goals of which is SDGs, MDGs. Also with the SDGs. Look, I am member of the high-level panel for post-2015. And now we are talking about what is the other goals that we will do for the after 2015. It's a big discussion, and we did a great work. But the question is, will people after 15 on 2030 will ask us, where is the implementation? I am talking about implementation. So with goals, you have to make also the tools how to implement. Not just goals, not just plan. And also to put how to finance that goals. That is the big problem that happens with the MDGs and also SDGs. We have another thing, another new goals for the development, especially for women, and for women and men, but especially for women, when we talk about children, about education, we don't just we don't want just to be primary just primary school. We want them to have secondary school.
Well, all the way through every level of education, from primary through to university and beyond.
At least for to talk. After 2015, we need to educate children to reach to that secondary school, not just to primary school. No, the 2015, the previous MDGs talk about just primary school. Also, we want, as I said in my speech, that we want to put the percentage of 30% for participation for women. It must be in every where in the country, in the government, in the embassies, in the public jobs. So, in general, if we talk about goals, we can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But also, again, we need implementation. Well, I want to add something very important, that is support women, that is support, all the world, not just women, and all the world, which is, and we are, inshallah, we will put it in the coming goals, which is fighting corruption, which is good governance, which is transparency. These companies, wasn't in the previous goals. Inshallah, it will be in the coming.
It's a hugely important one.
Yeah, it's very important. But I am optimistic with the people. I hope to be optimistic with the government.
Well, thank you, Tawakel. And I take your point about things like governance being extraordinarily important to put an emphasis on in the post-2015 period. It seems to me, that the sun is pretty much setting over Little Rock, and we're running out of time. And as we've got three powerful, influential, and important females on the panel, and it's going to be the last time we have an opportunity to either quiz them or put a thought on the table, I do invite anybody who wants to make a comment before the sun finally sets on this conference to do it right now, because we're running short of time. So if there's anybody who, having heard Tawakel and Kim and Carol, would like just to make a final point or raise a question, please do. If not, I'm going to invite Kim, because I can tell you're itching just to make one last word, and because you're very closely associated with Club of Madrid, and because you've spent an awful lot of time fighting the fight, I'm going to give you the final word, so go ahead.
Well, I'd like to actually make sure that I say something about this wonderful organization, the Club of Madrid. I am a founding member of the Club of Madrid. I actually was its Secretary General for 3 years. I'm now just happy to be a member, and I do projects. But all of the things that we're talking about are things that the Club of Madrid really embodies. When we created the organization, as I said, for lunch the other day, we had, I think, something like 35 members. We're now over 90. We keep saying we should cap our membership, but then we find good people. And, as one of the first Prime Minister of Canada once said, if you want me to build a better cabinet, you have to send me better wood. And to somebody who says we should have more women, just elect more women presidents and prime ministers with good democratic credentials, and as soon as they're out of office, we nab them. So the proportion of women in the Club of Madrid is very much a reflection of people out there. But I just want to say something about this group of people, because I've come to love them very much. And one of the things that we enjoy about our annual meeting is the opportunity to get together and see one another. And, Sadiq El-Mahdi, one of the original, Joaquin Chizano was just a hero in his country. Their stories of each of these members is terrific. But what we're able to do, these are not people who are backward looking. They're all looking forward. How can we make changes? We're committed to democratic governance, and we understand the importance of good governance for making change. And we're constantly looking for issues where we can use our capacities to make progress. Sometimes it's convening power. In 2005, and on the anniversary of the Madrid bombings, we used our convening power to bring together the largest group of security experts ever convened in Madrid for the Madrid Summit on Democracy, Terrorism, Security that produced the Madrid agenda, and it's a very important contribution to the debate on how to deal with terrorism. But what's interesting is that our members have all sorts of different talents. And when we talk about the advancement of women, we've been involved in the advancement of women really right from the beginning. And our male members are deeply committed to this because they're smart people and they get it. And it's interesting because the women members, we go and we do projects, and for women in different parts of the world, we're often kind of we're the inspiration. Mary Robinson and I went in 2009 to launch a program on peace and security for women in peace and security in the Horn of Africa, and it was wonderful. But our male members go as well, and they participate, and they create a safe space for women in these countries to meet with leaders in their government, because who's going to give a hard time to the former Prime Minister of Norway, to the former Prime Minister of Romania, to the former Prime Minister of Latvia? And our members, our member Valdis Burkovs from Latvia led our mission working with East Timor, which involved a number of our other members as well. You'd say, what does a Latvian know about East Timor? Well, small countries dominated by large neighbors, finally get their independence. They have a diaspora that returns, doesn't speak the native language, all sorts of interesting things. And Jose Ramos Horta is now a member of the Club of Madrid. He's out of office, but he was very grateful for that. I just give you one example because I could tell you stories, but in our programs to deal with the empowerment of women, I remember I went on a mission one time with Sir Ketumili Maziri, the former president of Botswana. And if you know anything about African politics, you know he's highly, highly respected as an African leader, and he's a darling. We went off to Sierra Leone to meet with people in government and civil society and the media to encourage the participation of women in politics. So I go as the former Prime Minister of Canada, and so I'm the one the women look to and say, yeah, you know, this is great, you can do it. But I'm not really somebody they necessarily relate to. They're inspired by it. But Sir Ket is the guy who is the very respected African leader who says to them, you know, if you're not using your women, if you're not giving the women empowerment, you're walking on one leg. And so it's this combination of people. And so I want to say about the Club of Madrid, we actually had our governing meeting this week before the conference started, and we approved a new relationship. And you heard Liz Broderick talk, whether it was today or yesterday, about she's the gender relations person in Australia, the dynamic, wonderful thing of what they're doing there and how she brought business leaders together to be instruments for change. Well, we have just created a relationship with a wonderful Australian business leader, Clive Palmer, to increase our relationship with the business community, because we work with civil society, we work with government agencies and development agencies around the world and the European Commission, but we realize that we need to reach out and work more with the business community. And so Clive Palmer has become a supporter of the Club of Madrid, and we're going to work with him in trying to see how we can work with that part of the triangle of people being involved. So I just want to say that the Club of Madrid, like all organizations, gets a lot of requests to do things, and we have lots of project money that comes. So we do, like every other organization, need core funding, and Clive Palmer's contribution is going to be important. But I say to people, when you contribute to the Club of Madrid, what you get is over 3,000 years of political experience among our members. This is true. Over 3,000 years of political experience, which they give for nothing. Our members do not get paid when they tromp around the world to work for this. No, you are leveraging something important and unique, and we are eager to hear from all of you who are deeply committed to progress, your ideas of how we might partner with you to use this remarkable, unique resource, the largest forum of democratic leadership in the world, and we are free, we're independent, we have no agenda, we have no axe to grind, except to make the world a better place. And we're thrilled that we were here in Little Rock with our annual meeting and annual conference to be able to work with you. And I have to say that I've heard some wonderful, practical, concrete things that we're going to think about how we can maybe work with our private sector partners, government partners, to advance women. And I'm going to be quiet now, but Stephen Sacker... I live a lot in France, and I watch him on BBC World on Hard Talk, and he's fantastic, but you're a pussycat as a moderator.
I might have interrupted by now, but I appreciate the sentiment, and I think it's very important that you said it. I like the 3,000 years. It makes you as durable as the pyramids. So, I promise, I'm going to give Tawakel the last word, because she just said she wanted to say something very briefly about the Arab Spring, and I kind of want to hear it for myself. I'm going to be selfish, and I think we all probably want to hear it. So.
I want to talk about women in Arab Spring and how to support them. If you want to support women in all development countries and underdeveloped countries, especially in Arab Spring, you have to support their struggle on fighting corruption, on step down the dictators in their countries and also in building their countries again. You have to support women in Syria. How? You have to ask yourself. I am sure that most of you has a good position in their country, and you can support women in Syria. You can also support women in all Arab Spring, which now in the transitional period. It isn't just giving women some money or giving them some, speeches or some dreams. That is very, very important. But also to support the transitional period through supporting the political process, with economic process, with everything that lead women to create a new country. So without country, women will not have their rights. Women need a country. Women, like men in all the development countries, needs country, needs state. Without helping their struggle, they will lose, and you will lose. So I'm sure that we can together work for them, and I am so proud of all women in Arab Spring, all men there, and I hope that we can change the world, and I am sure that we will change the world. Thank you.
No, Tawakel, thank you. Thank you very much, and may the men and women of the Arab world march together toward that future. And ladies and gentlemen, we're almost out of time. I'm going to invite Wim back in just a second, but before I do that, I'm not going to try to wrap up or sum up, because in a way there's too much that we've talked about. There are too many issues that we all need to go away and think about. I've thoroughly enjoyed my very small part in this process over the last 24 hours, but the main thing for me has been the chance to listen to some extraordinary experiences, so much insight, so much courage and bravery from different participants on different panels. And I don't exclude these three marvelous women here. So please give them a very warm hand for the contribution today. And before we all do close and leave this building, it's my pleasure just to invite Wim Kok back for a final thought, Wim, and to close the event. I missed it.
to the floor, but anyhow, I managed to come here. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. I won't be long at all. You were unable, of course, to wrap up. So am I. So the conference and the outcome of the conference speaks for itself. And we had high-quality discussions. I want to thank the moderators, you yourself, the panelists, and all other speakers and participants for their contributions during the past 24 hours. I think there are good reasons to spread that sense of optimism. I feel especially optimistic because people start to understand more and more, also outside this room, that women empowerment is not only the good thing, the right thing to do, but really the smart thing to do. And the same is true for unacceptable income and wealth differences nowadays. We feel a growing tendency almost everywhere, in the United States, in China, and other parts of the world, that with too large wealth and income differences, economic growth is going to be hampered. It can be a hindrance for further full and effective economic growth. So that's good. That's the good part of the story. What is also good, that we talk about principles, about values, about the need for human rights, but it's also extremely important to talk about the implementation of rules and practice. So, and also that was emphasized here. I only want to make two final remarks giving some kind of perspective. One is, against the background of this sense of optimism, I think it remains good, it remains valuable to think in terms of not only what do we want, but what do we realize? The Millennium Goals, there will be, of course, a new set of goals for a new period of time, and I belong to those. I signed the Millennium Goals on behalf of my country in 2000 as Prime Minister of the Netherlands. I belong to those who say, yeah, we need a set of goals again, but without implementation plans and tools, we don't reach the real goal and don't reach the target. Second warning is, I heard a very inspiring remark in the course of this morning's discussion, where someone said, well, let's take our agenda, let's mark this date, the 18th of December 2013, and let's, in 2013, on the 18th of December, think about what difference have I made, what have I done. And I would like to amend that idea, because 1 year is far away. I would do it more or less on a regular basis and think about what have we done in our capacity, and we will do that also as Club de Madrid, in order to contribute to the women's case. The Club de Madrid promo has already been given by Kim, so that doesn't have to be repeated. I want to thank the hosts, thank again President Clinton, thank all the participants and sponsors and friends who have made this possible. I want to thank specifically also the cities of North Little Rock and Little Rock. I hope you will be able to enjoy the dinner this evening that will be generously presented, offered by the dinner party offered by the mayor of North Little Rock, and wish you safe travels home and Merry Christmas. Wish you all the best. Thank you.